I was reading about a clinical trial recently that it felt like it was ripped straight out of a Christopher Nolan film.
Oh, yeah.
Imagine sitting in a sterile hospital room, just staring at random images on a screen. A red car, a golden retriever, a sunset.
Okay.
Beside you, there's a team of neuroscientists watching a monitor, but they aren't looking at your vitals.
What are they looking at?
They are watching the literal electricity of your thoughts, mapping the exact firing pattern that happens when your brain recognizes, say, that red car.
So a direct brain-to-computer feed of a thought?
Exactly. And then comes the part that feels like genuine science fiction. They send a tiny targeted pulse of electricity back into your hippocampus, mimicking that exact neural spark.
And the result?
Well, suddenly your recall isn't just better, it's augmented. In these trials, participants' ability to remember jumped by nearly 40%.
40%, that's a staggering number.
It's the closest thing we've ever seen to a real-life pensive, a way to mechanically sharpen the past. For a moment, it feels like a total triumph.
You can see the immediate upside. Curing Alzheimer's. Perfect recall for exams.
Never forgetting a loved one's face. But then the narrative takes a chilling turn when you look at the work being done on the other end of the spectrum.
The opposite of enhancement.
Yes. In a lab in New York, researchers aren't trying to build memories. They're trying to selectively dismantle them.
How?
They've been experimenting with a specific molecule that acts like the glue for our experiences.
Okay.
By temporarily disabling just that one molecule, they can make a specific neural connection simply vanish. The memory doesn't just fade, the bridge to it is burned.
So it's not just forgotten, it's structurally gone.
Right. And this instantaneous shift from the wonder of fixing the brain to the clinical reality of editing it is deeply unsettling.
It certainly is.
It forces a question that goes far beyond biology. If we can dial our memories up like a volume knob or, delete them like a browser history, what happens to the person left behind? If you remove the sting of a heartbreak or the shadow of a trauma, are you still the same person who walked into that lab?
That's the question.
We've always treated our memories as the ironclad proof of our identity, but the latest science suggests they might just be files waiting to be overwritten.
And that dichotomy you just laid out, the one between mechanical editing for comfort and mechanical editing for competitive advantage, is exactly what we are here to unpack.
It feels like two sides of a very dangerous coin.
It is. This deep dive is about the collision of neuroethics, economic reality, and sociology, all centered on this terrifying new power to rewrite the self.
So where do we even begin?
We're grappling with two powerful forces. First, there's memory erasure, which seeks immediate therapeutic comfort by smoothing out personal pain.
The appeal of that is obvious.
Of course. And second, there's memory enhancement, which seeks a massive competitive edge by boosting capability.
A neurological arms race.
In a sense, yes. We need to explore the deep neuroethics of memory, how this technology could structurally dismantle the concept of meritocracy, and perhaps most crucially, the sociological threat this power poses to our shared history and our collective reality.
This really isn't science fiction anymore, is it?
Not at all. It is policy we must contend with, and soon.
Okay, let's unpack the science first. For decades, when we talked about trying to interfere with memory, say, for treating PTSD, we were pretty limited.
Right. The early methods were fairly blunt instruments.
We had traditional non-invasive techniques. We talked about pharmacological interventions, maybe certain beta blockers, or using things like transcranial magnetic stimulation to disrupt memory consolidation.
Those early methods were crucial, they were pioneering, but they hit very hard limitations.
In what way?
They often lacked spatial resolution, meaning, they couldn't hit the target with the precision necessary to modify only the memory trace you wanted.
So you're saying they were messy?
Extremely messy. They lacked focality, and they often struggled to reach the deeper critical brain areas where consolidated memories are stored. They were more about dampening general anxiety than surgically altering a specific neural pathway.
So the new frontier had to solve that precision problem.
It did. The modern advanced memory modulation techniques leverage tools like optogenetics, which is using light to control genetically modified neurons.
Which is mind-blowing in itself.
It is. And then you have molecular modification and the most relevant and immediate threat, invasive brain-computer interfaces, or IBCIs.
And these are the ones that get past those old limitations.
These technologies bypass the surface issues entirely. They offer superior focality and the ability to reach those deeper brain structures, like the hippocampus and amygdala, with unprecedented, almost surgical control.
Tell us more about how these invasive BCIs actually manage to edit a memory once it's already formed. I'm having a hard time visualizing the technical erasure part.
It's a good question. If a memory is a vast network, how do you find the specific thread of pain you want to cut, right?
Yeah, exactly.
The key mechanism used by IBCIs is what's called electrical neuromodulation.
Okay.
Think of a memory not as a single file, but as a massive, complex electrical circuit board with millions of pathways.
Right.
The emotion attached to that memory, the trauma, the pain, the fear, that's carried by a specific, dedicated electrical junction. We aren't trying to blow up the whole circuit board.
You're just trying to reroute one connection.
Precisely. We are targeting site-specific neurons through direct contact and then manipulating those neural circuits with electrical signaling.
So it's less about deletion and more about deactivation. It's like turning a volume knob down on the trauma without deleting the movie clip itself.
That's a perfect metaphor. The clinical goal is selective deactivation. It means intentionally dampening the emotional impact, the valence of a specific, undesired memory.
By inhibiting certain neurons.
By inhibiting selected groups of neurons. The factual content can remain. The person remembers the event, but the visceral sting is removed. The prospect is to control forgetting, effectively erasing the emotional color of bad memories at will.
That's wild. But wait, how close are we really to seeing this jump to human application? Is it still just theoretical, or are we on the cusp?
Well, we have a very robust empirical foundation. Research conducted in rodent models and non-human primates has already proven highly effective in deactivating specific consolidated memories.
So it's proven in animal models.
Yes. We know we can successfully reduce the emotional intensity of episodes associated with fear conditioning. For instance, in one study, the memory trace of a fear response was entirely decoupled from the actual experience by intervening during the memory reconsolidation phase.
What does that mean, the reconsolidation phase?
It's a window of time after a memory is recalled when it becomes temporarily unstable or malleable before it's stored again. By intervening then, you can alter it.
So the biological mechanism is there.
The mechanism, the ability to modulate the stabilization process of a memory trace, is supported by findings across multiple labs. The technical leap now is primarily ethical and regulatory, not purely scientific.
I'm still having a hard time wrapping my head around the technical risk. If they can target the memory with such surgical precision, shouldn't we trust the scientists to isolate it? Why is there this assumption that collateral damage is inevitable?
That is the essential neurological reality we have to confront. Memory is profoundly associative. It's not neat.
It's not like files in a cabinet.
Not at all. Memories are not neatly stored in separate folders labeled trauma and triumph. They are indexed by emotion, by context, and they share neural circuitry.
So they overlap.
Massively. So target interference of consolidated memories, especially the emotional core, can induce abrupt neural circuit changes across related domains.
Can you give us an example of how that unwanted collateral damage might manifest in a person?
Sure. Say you erase the visceral pain of a devastating romantic breakup.
A common use case, I'd imagine.
Absolutely, but that breakup may be inextricably linked to the memory of the intense vulnerability you felt when you first fell in love, or maybe the deep empathy you gained from processing that pain.
Okay, I see where this is going.
If the procedure dampens the specific neural cluster responsible for that acute emotional pain, it may accidentally diminish your general capacity for intense feeling, or even your ability to feel deep, unreserved joy.
Wow.
Selective memory modification poses a significant risk of adversely altering untargeted memory chains in similar domains. This could lead to unwanted behavioral or emotional changes like generalized apathy or, critically, the inability to feel complex moral emotions like guilt or intense pride.
So we are not just talking about a technical glitch. We are talking about fundamentally altering who a person is, and maybe they wouldn't even realize it until their personality just shifts.
Exactly, and this brings us right to the concept of identity. Philosophically, memories are considered the building blocks of one's self-narrative.
The story we tell ourselves about ourselves.
Precisely. And when you start altering those foundational memories, you risk psychological disruptions that impinge upon what we call an agent's narrative identity and their authenticity.
So you're saying it's not just a bad mood, it could trigger a profound identity crisis.
Yeah.
If I wake up without the memory of, say, a traumatic childhood event, do I lose the motivation or the framework that trauma might have given me?
That is the core philosophical problem. The discussion focuses on the first personal aspects of memories.
What do you mean by that?
These are the aspects that dictate how an individual feels, acts, and reacts toward future events. The act of accessing, reflecting upon, and interpreting our past isn't just nostalgia. It's how we construct meaning and purpose.
It's how we learn.
It's how we become who we are. This process of recalling and evaluating the past contextualizes our embodied experiences and, crucially, sets the patterns for future intentions and moral decision-making.
So if you radically change the emotional filter through which you view your past,
You fundamentally change the person preparing for the future. You become a stranger to your own story.
that tension between alleviating suffering and maintaining identity integrity is perfectly illustrated in this story I read about a woman named Elena.
Ah, yes. Elena's story is a profound ethical case study. It shows the unforeseen consequences of this technology, moving beyond just treating a symptom like PTSD and striking right at the heart of character.
Right. Elena had built a successful career, but a devastating professional failure. A huge public mistake spiraled into debilitating PTSD. She was basically non-functional.
And she sought out this new treatment.
She did. She underwent specialized neurointervention to edit out the visceral sting of that failure by dampening specific synaptic connections in her amygdala, the goal being just to remove the fear response.
And clinically, it worked.
Immediately, she returned to professional success, but the profound consequence came later.
The hollowness.
Exactly. Her success returned, but her connection to the struggle that built her character was severed. She felt a profound sense of hollowness.
Because by removing the pain associated with her failure, she inadvertently deleted the why, the grit, the extreme diligence, and the resilience that had previously defined her character.
So when she looked at her new success, she essentially lost the ability to answer the question, who earned it?
It was a success without an anchor, without the narrative of having overcome anything difficult. The identity was functionally erased, leaving a void.
This throws us into a major dilemma. On one hand, the moral imperative to alleviate human suffering, especially trauma, is undeniable. But on the other,
the removal of that struggle seems to have eroded a necessary moral component of her being. Should we eliminate suffering if that suffering is instrumental to character?
that's the question.
And that is the crux of the moral economy we are now facing. Memory modification risks eroding an individual's moral and emotional sensitivity. It detaches them from their capacity to feel profound moral emotions like regret, empathy, or shame, which are fundamental to personal and social identity.
If we accept that idea, how does this emotional blunting affect our decision-making going forward? Let's say we've erased the pain of a mistake.
It directly impairs what philosophers call the counterfactual capacity for reasoning.
Which in simpler terms means?
In simpler terms, if you don't feel the sting or the regret of a bad choice, you lose the ability to ask, what if I had done it differently? That loss of reflective pain makes you a much poorer moral decision maker next time.
So our feelings about the past aren't incidental.
Not at all. They contribute to this capacity, allowing us to generate and assess moral reasons for or against avenues of action. If you remove the emotional weight of certain decisions or past events, you remove a vital part of the internal compass guiding future, often more complex, behavior.
The pain of the past teaches us how to operate better in the future.
It does, and this raises deeply complex questions of moral responsibility and access. If we have this tool, who is morally permitted to use it?
Does liability shift if a victim uses it versus a perpetrator?
That's a huge issue. The ethical permissibility may vary wildly depending on the agent and the context. Consider the scenario you mentioned, a victim suffering debilitating trauma versus a perpetrator, someone who committed a horrific act and now suffers PTSD and genuine anguish as a result.
Both are suffering immensely.
Immensely. But the moral implications of memory modification are fundamentally divergent. Would we allow the perpetrator to erase the memory of their crime, effectively freeing them from the weight of moral consequence, even if it alleviated their genuine suffering?
It challenges our core value systems regarding justice and atonement.
Completely. We struggle to accept that someone could be rehabilitated if the very memory of what they did is gone.
And if we look beyond the individual, there's a political dimension to this therapeutic impulse to smooth over all difficulty. You mentioned the therapeutic state.
The risk is a societal one. It's the risk that both the marketplace and the state prioritize immediate psychological comfort over the difficult, often painful character-building process of overcoming adversity.
And what's the end result of that?
If we normalize the instant removal of discomfort via technology, the result is a society of predictable, non-dissenting, and ultimately hollowed-out individuals.
So what exactly is the therapeutic state, and how does it relate to memory editing? Where does that term come from?
The term was coined by the Hungarian-American psychiatrist Thomas Szasz back in 1963.
Okay.
He described it as a system where government and psychiatry collaborate, often using pseudomedical or clinical interventions to repress actions, thoughts, and emotions that are disapproved of by the societal majority or the ruling class.
It sounds like social control disguised as medical necessity or public health.
That is precisely Szasz's argument. He viewed the system as the secularization of social control, where medicine assumes the authoritative, moralizing power once held by organized religion or pure state decree.
The state doesn't need to brand you a criminal or a heretic, they just brand you sick?
Exactly. In this system, ordinary problems in living, including things like gambling, shyness, general unhappiness, overeating, or even unconventional religious or political beliefs, are redefined and categorized as symptoms or illnesses requiring a medical cure.
Or mandatory intervention.
Or mandatory intervention. So the line between moral failure, political dissent, and medical ailment dissolves entirely.
And this is the great threat to freedom.
This is what Szasz argued. The ultimate consequence is frightening. The state swallows up everything human on the seemingly rational ground that nothing falls outside the province of health and medicine.
And that threatens individual dignity.
It does, because the definition of health becomes a definition of conformity. Why would a state prefer citizens who erase their painful memories?
Because they're easier to manage.
Because painful memories are often the source of political dissent, social movements, and revolutionary energy. A society focused solely on internal therapeutic comfort is a compliant, predictable, and ultimately non-protesting society. It's easy to govern, but lacks the necessary friction for liberty.
The therapeutic state is the ultimate frictionless bureaucracy.
That's a great way to put it.
So if the therapeutic state aims to smooth out individual discomfort by erasing these memories, this blunting inevitably has a vast societal impact.
Right, huge. When you reduce the intensity of personal suffering, you simultaneously weaken the emotional capital required for collective action and social change.
Can you explain what you mean by emotional capital?
I mean, collective memories and the intense shared emotions associated with them, they are vital. They function as emotional stimuli and catalyst for fighting systemic issues and striving for social change. We are talking about intersubjective trauma when an individual's pain is recognized as part of a larger systemic problem.
We see this in contemporary global movements all the time.
Exactly. Movements like #MeToo, which expose systemic power dynamics related to sexual abuse, or #Black Lives Matter, which fights racism and police violence.
Right.
They demonstrate that the shared awareness of collective trauma and the associated anger serves a critical purpose. It encourages individuals to advocate for justice.
So the capacity to feel these memories is paramount.
It is. To feel the negative emotions associated with past and present injustice is paramount for the fight for justice. Dampening these emotions, which requires a cognitive openness to negative emotions, runs the severe risk of making society collectively unable to acknowledge, confront, and ultimately decolonize existing systemic injustices.
So neurointervention, even if it's applied individually in a clinic, becomes a powerful tool for maintaining the status quo.
Yes, because it robs the public sphere of its necessary emotional intensity and shared anger.
Which brings up a larger sociological concern.
Absolutely. The concern here, which we can frame through a Durkheimian analysis, is that neurointervention could dissolve the shared historical consciousness and the organic ties essential for social cohesion.
Who was Durkheim again?
Emil Durkheim, one of the foundational sociologists. He argued that a society holds together through a collective consciousness, shared beliefs, morals, and crucially, a shared history.
The organic glue.
Exactly. If everyone is editing their painful, difficult pasts away, we lose the shared, difficult historical context that bonds us together in mutual sympathy and struggle. If your struggle is erased, it ceases to be a point of connection with others who suffered similarly.
And we're already seeing this dissolving cohesion in other ways.
Right.
Particularly with digital technology, which accelerates what you call social atomization.
That is a crucial connection. The breakdown of shared historical consciousness is mirrored and amplified by the ubiquity of personalized digital networks.
Networks that are placeless and timeless.
Right, and they replace genuine community with a kind of mass isolation that creates the environment for what has been termed the anxious generation.
It's funny, we talk about isolation, but the irony is we're constantly connected.
Ah.
I think anyone listening can relate to that feeling of being perpetually logged on, yet completely alone in a room.
The theory holds up precisely because the connection is shallow and conditional. The anxiety stems from the omnipresent, acute threat of social shaming and expulsion in these placeless networks.
Social death.
Humans are evolutionarily attuned to social threats, often valuing the threat of social death above physical death. Before the digital age, if a child was bullied at school, they could go home and find sanctuary.
There was an escape.
There were physical malls. Now, the network follows you everywhere. There is no escape, no physical boundary to mark where the community ends and sanctuary begins.
So there's perpetual uncertainty about your status in the group.
It results in a pervasive sense of loneliness, even when you're physically present with other people. The network creates fear, not fellowship.
That sounds like we are losing the fundamental common sense that grounds reality itself because we aren't even seeing the same world anymore.
This is where the political theorist Hannah Arendt provides vital context.
Okay.
She argued that a genuine public requires a foundation of shared, visible reality, what she called common sense.
And for her, common sense wasn't just intuition.
No, for Arendt, it's the sense of reality shared by the community through conversation and visibility. When the world is experienced together, we have a common yardstick for truth.
But personalized algorithms and screens eclipse this shared world.
They do. If your feed shows you one set of facts and my feed shows me a completely different set, we cease to inhabit the same public space. We are forced into individualized rabbit holes where our reality is constantly being tailored and confirmed for us.
And what is the political consequence of that worldlessness and isolation?
Arndt's monumental work on totalitarianism concluded that to be deprived of the reality that comes with being seen and heard by others in a shared public sphere is to be cast into worldlessness.
Which makes you vulnerable.
Isolation, in this context, preconditions individuals for ideological manipulation. When the center of the shared reality cannot hold, and individuals lack interiority because of constant digital distraction, and they lack an external common ground, they become mere conduits for whatever extreme ideology fills that vacuum.
The result is total atomization.
Yes. Social life descends into a state of competitive isolation, facilitated by the very technology that promised global connection. If everyone lives in their own curated world, the ability to organize, agree on facts, or demand collective justice simply vanishes.
We've spent considerable time on the danger of deletion and blunting. Let's pivot now to the opposite extreme. Augmentation.
The pursuit of cognitive enhancement.
Right, which threatens to collapse the social contract of meritocracy. I read a compelling cautionary story about a student named Julian that illustrates this perfectly.
Julian represents the old order. The belief that merit is forged through late nights, genuine intellect, and disciplined effort.
The idea that success is something you earn.
Exactly. And his experience shows how quickly that foundation is destroyed when technology enters the equation.
So Julian, a hardworking student from a modest background, suddenly finds himself in a competition that valued technological access over human discipline.
He was struggling.
He was. And it was in a field where his peers weren't just studying harder. They were using hippocampal microstimulators, essentially neural boosts, for accelerated data processing and near-perfect recall.
He realized he was competing against hardware,
not against the innate capacity of other humans. And this is the moment when traditional educational standards and professional competition are rendered structurally obsolete.
The structural impact is immediate and profound. Achievement becomes tied not to genuine human capacity or hard work, but to technological access, optimization, and early intervention.
If perfect recall is available for a price, the entire structure of the university, which tests comprehension and memory, just crumbles.
It does. The elite become the optimized elite, not necessarily the most capable or the most dedicated. This creates an unassailable advantage tied to wealth and access, not to effort.
And this technological stratification echoes the disruption we're seeing from AI across white-collar sectors today. We see AI used to automate entry-level jobs, but the same structural problem exists. Are we removing the rungs of the ladder?
It absolutely mirrors it. AI is already being used heavily to automate junior, entry-level tasks and busy work.
Things like initial data sorting, basic code documentation.
Template legal briefs, that sort of thing. This increases efficiency and often leverages offshoring to reduce costs.
Which seems economically sound on the surface. But there is a profound long-term risk here that many companies aren't accounting for, correct?
There is a severe skills gap warning coming down the pipeline. To truly master any complex system, be it finance, software architecture, or engineering, you have to know every piece of it.
Including the mundane, repetitive foundational tasks.
Especially those. Removing that foundational busy work prevents the next generation of juniors from gaining the necessary exposure, the systems context, and the management experience they need to mature into subject experts.
And problem solvers and leaders.
That's right. If a junior engineer never manually debugs a line of code, or an analyst never manually sorts through a messy data set, they will never understand the underlying architecture when the AI-generated system inevitably fails.
We are creeping toward a deep chasm in the skills gap within a decade.
We are. Because the entry-level rungs of the ladder are being automated away by technology that the current leadership often doesn't even fully understand, leaving no path for the next generation of real experts.
So if pure information and busy work are vulnerable, what jobs remain protected? What is the human advantage when technology can recall and process faster than Julian ever could?
Jobs purely dependent on information, memorization, or routine data processing are vulnerable. The human advantage lies in roles focused on decision-making under ambiguity.
Creative system architecture.
And messy tasks requiring context, critical thinking, and synthesizing radically new concepts. The enduring value is in being a genuine problem solver and innovator, not a replaceable cog.
Like a pilot in a cockpit.
That's a perfect example. A human pilot remains in the cockpit for the capacity for instant contextual critical thinking and for liability limitation. Even with advanced autopilot, if the system enters an unknown state, the machine stalls. The human adapts.
The danger then comes when the human delegates that critical thinking entirely to the machine, which results in these high-profile disasters we've seen recently.
Yes, that leads us directly to the fundamental structural limitation of generative AI, the problem of hallucination.
And this isn't just a bug, it's a feature.
It's a design constraint. AI models are fundamentally designed to be plausible, not accurate or truthful. They are maximizing the probability of the next most sensible token, the next word.
So they have to make things up.
This inherent need for plausibility necessitates hallucination, inventing facts, data, or source material to create new, flowing output. It is a design flaw that is extremely difficult to engineer away.
That seems like a terrifying foundation to build a global economy on, a system whose core function is to prioritize plausible fiction over verifiable truth. How does this manifest in the real world?
The real-world disasters prove the danger of blindly trusting this output without human oversight and depth domain expertise. We have seen well-documented examples of lawyers facing severe penalties, including disbarment. For presenting non-existent, AI invented legal cases in court, complete with fabricated citations and court documents that look perfectly plausible.
Because the AI's goal is to produce text that looks like a legal brief.
Not one that is factually accurate, yes.
What about in technical and security fields? Is it just as bad?
It is. In cybersecurity and software development, people blindly copying and pasting AI-invented code have led to significant operational and security disasters.
Why is that?
The AI is trained on vast amounts of internet code, much of which is unsafe, malicious, or poorly documented. When you ask it to run a new piece of code, the AI doesn't check for best security practices. It produces the statistically most probable lines of code, often replicating known vulnerabilities.
And if you ask it to find malware?
It might invent the names of malware or exploit techniques entirely, leading analysts to chase ghosts and waste critical time. The lack of inherent quality control means blindly trusting AI output is dangerous across numerous high-stakes domains. So the ability to succeed in the future isn't about using AI, but deeply understanding its profound limitations and its tendency toward plausible falsehoods.
That is the crucial requirement for future expertise. The successful professional must deeply understand AI, its limitations, its data sourcing, its correct application, and crucially, know when to stop and question the output.
So where does the human advantage lie in the end?
The advantage will belong to people who can synthesize genuinely new, dogma-altering phenomena. AI is fundamentally limited by the data available to it. It cannot accurately predict forefront areas in fields like particle physics or empirical biophysics.
Places where the variables are constantly shifting or simply unknown.
Exactly. If you are generating high-quality primary data, disproving old models, or solving a problem that has never been solved before, you are by definition ahead of the machine, which can only combine existing concepts.
The future belongs to those who ask fundamentally new questions,
Not to those who perfectly remember the answers to old ones.
So to bring this all together, the power to edit memory, whether it's through enhancement for merit or erasure for therapy, forces us into a fundamental moral and societal divergence.
A balancing act.
A constant balancing of personal well-being against identity integrity and the necessary cohesion of society. The ethical landscape is complex, requiring us to systematically acknowledge and balance the diverse impacts of erasure, emotional blunting, and augmentation on the individual self and on the relational public sphere.
Our entire understanding of what constitutes a whole person, defined by both the resilience gained from surviving struggle and the unaugmented capacity for genuine merit, is shifting beneath our feet at tremendous speed.
It's a paradigm shift.
The files of our personal history are no longer locked and sacred. They are ready for editing, demanding that we quickly define who we are as individuals and as a society before the editor's hand becomes invisible and absolute.